Hey there everyone, this is Victor with Victor Vector JKU. Last time in our first axle swap video, we worked on cleaning up the axles and adding some reinforcement brackets. Today, we're going to be going through my preparation for painting these axles, installing them underneath the Jeep, along with some of the other components I decided to upgrade at the same time. Let's jump into it. Alright, so just finished up with getting the last cleaning done, wiping everything down with acetone, masking, and getting my garage prepped for paint. So this is what we got. So I got a few different tarps and blankets and stuff down just to kind of prevent overspray onto the garage floor, but otherwise I have my axles on jack stands. They are all masked off on the places that I do not want to get paint. So basically the knuckles, upper control arm bushings, the yoke, the diff cover, and the ball joints. And then for the rear, again, got the yoke cover, ARB hookup, the vent, and then also the drums. So we're all set up. Basically where I have the jack stand set up right now is it enables me to be able to roll the axle. So it's gonna chip or mess up the paint as I'm painting, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna first roll it up, get the bottom, and then roll it down, and then be able to get everything, because I can touch up the bottom afterwards when it's on the rig, no big deal. And again, same thing with the front axle. So let's go ahead and show you guys what I went with. So to start off with, I have an acid etch primer. Basically, I'm going to be putting this down just to make sure any areas that there's bare steel showing, that this will create a good sticking surface for the paint I'm applying. And then I'm using a 2K Hot Rod Black Satin paint. I picked this up from Wesco Auto Body Supply. Basically what this is a little bit better than a typical aerosol spray can. Basically the hardener is actually separate. There's this little plunger in the bottom of the can that you're going to basically take this red cap off, put it underneath. After you shake it up for a little bit, you're going to pop it. That's going to penetrate and allow the hardener into the rest of the paint. And then you're going to shake it some more, and then it makes a harder coating, and it's going to be more durable over time than just a typical aerosol spray can. Alright, so I've been shaking up my can. I got it shooken up pretty well for the last couple of minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get my gloves on. I've already got a long sleeve on, and I have my respirator ready to go. So alright, so I got my primer down. You can see that I actually had to switch up paints on the front axle. I ran out of the acid edge, so I just switched over to some Rust-Oleum primer. So I went ahead and finished off the top of the front axle with that. Next up, we're going to be putting down the 2K. So I already shook this up for about 2 minutes. I flipped it over, put the red piece on here, pushed the plunger in, pierced it, and I've been shaking it for about 2 more minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and continue spraying. Alright, so that wraps up all the paint on the axles. So I still have a good portion of a can left here, so I went through 3 cans to do 1 coat on each. Gotta say that I am pretty happy with the results so far. Obviously the paint's still wet, but I think they turned out looking really sweet. Good satin black color, and the coat came out really even too, so I am quite pleased. But yeah, so I am getting excited. Gonna be throwing these guys in no time flat. Alright, so I got all the tarps out of the way. I got the axles off of the jack stands, and I got them on some dollies right now. I just pulled the Jeep back in, and I have it up on jack stands. We're ready to get these guys mounted up underneath the Jeep. Like I said, I have my axles here on a couple of dollies so I can roll them into place once I get the current axles out. I'm sure you guys don't want to watch me do all this. I'm gonna go ahead and get everything unbolted and drop the front axle out. All right, so everything is now unbolted, so I'm gonna go ahead and drop it free and remove the springs. Alright, so next up, what I gotta do is get this guy into position. Alright, so last night I finished getting the front axle installed, so that guy is now underneath the Jeep. I still have to come back and finish up the steering and the sway bar link as well, but otherwise, I mean, that axle is under there. I am very excited. I have to come back and finish up all the torquing, but that's where that one sits. And then right now I just got my rear end up in the air. I'm about to start tearing into this guy, rip out the factory axle, and we'll be replacing it with my new locked Sport Dana 44 rear. Alright everyone, so got everything all unbolted from the rear axle, so we are ready to go ahead and slide her on out. Alright, so we got all the brackets that I needed to installed and transferred over. So I installed my new JKS rear shock relocation bracket, which includes the trimming of the lower control arm bracket. I also have my JKS track bar relocation bracket installed. So next up is I'm going to go and bring them into place. So we have the Jeep back down on its tires, the axle installed, and I went through and I torqued all of the fasteners for both the front and the rear axle. So I also went through and I added this little orange paint marking that you can see on top of the bolt and nut for the shock. I did this to create a little bit easier inspection. That way I can always just visually inspect to see if that paint line is aligned still, or if it's been broken, and if so, then I need to check my torques. And then I also went ahead and replaced the gear oil in both the front and rear axles, so I'm all set up there. So now I reinstalled the factory rear driveline. However, I do actually have an Adams 1350 drive shaft that I'm going to be throwing in the rear, but I'm on a little bit of a tight timeline because tomorrow I'm going to the Crawling for a Cure event put on by JK Switchback, 4WD Trek, and Go to Off-Road. So I need to get my Jeep all bolted up, finished up, and on the road, ready to go for tomorrow for a shakedown run. Now for the front axle, like I said, we already have everything bolted up, torqued down. We're good to go up here. The only thing I have left to do is install my steering, but I'm going to be covering this in a separate video, so I'm going to go ahead and throw a link down in the video description below that you guys can go ahead and check that out. And just now also for the front end, I installed the Synergy track bar reinforcement bracket to the frame just to give a little bit more strength to that area. Alright guys, so I just finished up installing the Fusion 4x4 2.5 ton steering system, which includes the drag link and tie rod. And I gotta say that these components are massive. You might notice that I do not have a steering stabilizer hooked up. Ran into a little bit of a clearance issue, so I'm gonna leave that off for tomorrow's shakedown run. And so now the only thing left for me to do to be ready for tomorrow is install my front Adams drive shaft. But again, I'm going to be doing similar to the steering. I'm going to cover this in a separate video. Alright guys, so I just finished installing the Adams front drive shaft into Vector. Now the one thing that I still need to do is I need to plug in my programmer, use the JScan app, and update for the new gear ratio that I have in the axle. So currently right now it's programmed for 3.73 to 1 ratio, but now I'm running 4.88. That'll throw off and put me into a limp mode. So I need to adjust that in the JScan app. In the JScan app, what we're first going to do is select your vehicle and select the device that you're using to connect with. From here, you're then going to go to the adaptation dropdown and scroll up until you get to the tire and axle settings. From there, we're going to then select axle ratio, and we're going to click the drop down and select your desired gear ratio. We're then going to click on the go button, and this is going to process for a few minutes here. When the JScan app successfully finishes programming, there's going to be an additional pop-up that will come up on your screen. If you have an automatic, this is an additional step that you will need to follow. So we are all wrapped up. So Vector has now got the new Dynatrac Dana 44 Pro Rock in the front, the matching sport, locked, and geared rear axle. I have my Synergy track bar reinforcement bracket on the frame. I have my new Fusion 4x4 2.5 ton steering along with my Adams front drive shaft, and then I also had installed my ARB air compressor as well, plumbed that in and ran that inside to my switch panel here, which is going to be able to run my compressor, rear and front lockers. The only thing that I have left to do, which is going to take place after tomorrow's shakedown run, is going to be the Adams 1350 rear driveline that I'll be installing. But otherwise, that wraps up this video for today, guys. Let me know what you think. Put any questions or feedback in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up and help me grow my channel by sharing this video to any social media platforms that you guys have, anything that anyone else will find value in these installs that I'm doing, as well as subscribing to my channels. So I would greatly appreciate that. I am super excited to get Vector out on the trails tomorrow, test out all the new components, see how everything performs, and Tahuya is going to be a great day tomorrow and also supporting a good cause. So looking forward to it. Otherwise, guys, we are Vector JKU, and we are taking on this build and the trail of both direction and magnitude. All right, guys, have a great one. Catch you next time.